All right, welcome back to the professional interview series for Parks and Rec professionals. Today we have Dr. Deb Jordan. Dr. Jordan, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I know you and I were talking before this. It's a little rainy here, so it's putting a little damper on my outdoor recreation right now. But it's supposed to clear up later in the week, just in time for the weekend. So I'm pretty happy about that. Um, how are things there at East Carolina University, right?
Right. Yep. In Greenville, North Carolina. So we're about hour and a half away from the ocean, and about 5 hours, quite honestly, from the mountains. But there's a lot of pretty stuff in between. So we on this end have a lot of sunshine. We actually could use some rain. But yeah, things are good. Kind of quiet right now since summer school just started. So a lot of the students, of course, are gone for quite a while.
Well, very cool. Well, so I kind of want to with this interview, I kind of want to follow your path. So with that, let's kind of start from the beginning. You know, where are you from? Where did you grow up? What kind of things did you do, recreation related, in your youth? I guess.
Yeah, sure. Well, going way back as a kid, um, grew up somewhat in Massachusetts. We moved to upstate New York. I did a lot of stuff with our summer recreation program as a kid, and got to become a junior recreation leader. That was the first time I think that I really got into what it's all about, what a difference it made for people. Um, and then from there, I went to Slippery Rock State College in Pennsylvania. It's now Slippery Rock University. Um, I was actually started off as a physical education major because I knew I wanted to do something active. But I quickly discovered after a couple of years I didn't really want to go into the classroom.
Yeah.
A friend of mine had a class where they went rock climbing and rappelling and whitewater rafting, and I said, "What major is that?" And so she introduced me to outdoor rec, into the whole recreation department there. So that's what I went through as an undergrad. I
So
was
that's a
fortunate
great
enough.
major at that point as well, right?
Indeed, yes, yes. So yeah, I didn't have a clue what the major was or that you could get a major in Parks and Recreation. But once I did, I knew it was home.
Yeah.
It just felt like it fit. And in between my junior and senior year, a gentleman by the name of Paul Petzold, some folks may know him from the National Outdoor Leadership School and the Wilderness Education Association. He started that. So he came to campus, and after talking with him, I got supercharged. And so I went out to Wyoming, where I stayed for the summer, and I worked with groups for 5 weeks at a time up in the mountains, which was absolutely fabulous. I went through the outdoor leadership training program, went back to school, finished my last year, and then did my internship in Alaska, where we took groups up into the mountains and the glaciers and so forth for 10 weeks, was the length of the program. So it was amazing. I love those experiences. I knew that was what I wanted to go into when, as I was moving into a career.
So where were you at in Alaska?
We were in Homer, was our home
Okay.
base. It's on the southwest part of the state. We were right on. I totally forgot the name of the sound, but we did a lot of ocean kayaking.
Yeah.
In fact, we had a kayak from Homer over to another part of the state where we then did a lot of work on glaciers. We did a lot of backpacking, and then, of course, a lot of ocean kayaking. We kayaked with whales. I saw just amazing stuff: bears, wolves. I mean, you name it. It was part of the experience.
We got to go to Alaska, maybe 2015, 2016 now. But it was my first time there. We stayed in Anchorage, was our home base, and we go into to Talkeetna and
Uh-huh.
all around. But it was amazing.
Yeah.
So after you finish your internship and you're kind of getting out into the professional world, what was your next step, and what was your mindset or thought process with what you wanted to do from there?
Right. Well, I wanted to be a ranger for the National Park Service. I had done some summer work as a park naturalist in a community park that we had. And so that's what I wanted to do. But I didn't have a clue. I didn't have a mentor, didn't have anybody to help out. So, and this was back way before computers, of course. So I typed up one resume and I ran off a ton of copies and I sent it out to everybody I could think of. And when I look back on that, it was like the worst resume in the world. And I didn't hear back from anybody, or if I did, it was a no thank you.
Yeah.
So I actually had a year where, quite honestly, I worked as a security guard for a major company. And then when I was done with that, went and worked at several camps.
Yeah.
So I had some opportunities to engage in the outdoor recreation kind of stuff at that point. And then I said, enough with that because it was temporary.
Yeah.
And that's when I went for my master's at Western Illinois University, which is where you went as well.
Yeah, and that's something that I'm super thankful. I don't know if you remember this, but when I was looking at master's degrees, I had sent you and Dr. Kennedy both an email about recommendations, and you recommended Western Illinois, and it ended up working out.
Yes, and you were a little hesitant about it, from what I recall.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I was thinking about Illinois at the time, it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm considering this. But it was fantastic, and I really enjoyed my time there. So I owe you a big thank you for that. So how was being a security guard? Was it fun? Or interesting?
It was interesting, yeah, but it was boring. I had the night shift, so I worked from midnight till 8 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes I could pull a double, so I'd work from midnight till, I don't know, 5 o'clock the next day or something.
Yeah.
The money was pretty good,
Yeah.
but it was a placeholder. It was something that I made enough that I could live on my own in a little efficiency apartment kind of thing. It was one of those growing up kind of pieces.
Right.
It's I mean, you do what you got to do, and that's what job was available, and so I took it.
So it was something I wasn't expecting, so I had to ask about it.
Sure.
So going back to your your master's degree at Western Illinois, was that like one of the few places you were looking at, or how did you decide on Western Illinois University, which is really 3 hours from anything?
Right.
Which is awesome.
Right.
But it's something unique, I think.
Yes, middle of the cornfields is what I remember.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, again, when I was an undergrad, when I discovered Parks and Rec, I knew that it's what I wanted to do. So when I was looking for a master's degree program, that's all I looked for was Parks and Rec. And I applied at Penn State University and WIU. And quite honestly, they both had really strong programs. So I went with the one that had the best graduate assistantship and could pay my way through school.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have any money. It was before the day when most everybody now takes out student loans.
Yeah.
It was unheard of when I was working on my master's. So I had to be at a place where I knew I could have an assistantship or a job that would pay enough to get through school.
Yeah. And what did you study there, or what kind of things were you involved with at Western?
I was, again, outdoor rec was my main focus. I got into a little bit of environmental education at that time. We, as part of the department, we built the first ropes course out in that area. So I did a lot of work on the ropes course, a lot of working with groups, group dynamics, leadership kind of stuff. Had opportunities to go back and take groups out into the woods. So we went to Wyoming and the Wind River Range for a couple weeks at a time, sort of thing. And so, yeah, it was still on that leadership kind of thing. I will say that, again, partly because of funding, but I finished my degree in just 1 year.
Yeah.
I crammed in everything because that's all the money that I had.
Sure.
Most students now take 2 years to complete a master's, which is perfectly legitimate. But yeah, I pushed everything as hard as I could to get through school.
And I remember, with a lot of programs now too, you got the winter semesters, the May semesters, the summer semesters. So, it's one of those things. If you want to bust your hind end, you can kind of push and get that done. So you complete your degree at Western. What is the next step?
A really interesting step because, again, I was looking for something in outdoor recreation. And so I had resumes out. I was offered 2 jobs, and they were both working with adjudicated youth.
Okay.
So I know, and I had no background whatsoever in working with kids who had been in the prison system or the detention system or whatever the case was. So I took one of those, which was out in Ohio. just south of Cleveland in a town called Elyria. So I worked for 2 years as the outdoor rec programmer for kids who were in halfway houses where they had just gotten out of detention centers. So they ranged between 12 and 18. There were boys' houses and there were girls' houses. Again, we had a ropes course. I took the kids climbing and rappelling and canoeing and camping. And back, we still had snow, so we did cross-country skiing. So we did everything outdoor recreation wise. And I'll tell you, it's not a population I ever thought about, let alone working with. But I learned a ton. I learned a ton about myself. I learned a ton about how rough kids in inner city and urban areas have it. It was an incredible experience, very emotional up and down, because the kids would do really well, take them climbing, they'd be successful, and they'd be on a natural high and feel great. And then 2 days later, they would run away and go back and start using drugs again. Or quite honestly, both boys and girls had pimps. And because we were living in a community, it was really easy for those pimps and so forth to come by and pick up the kids and take them back to the city. So it was rough trying to work with the kids and help them develop and find a sense of self in a positive way. But it was a fantastic experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
How long were you there?
I did 2 years.
Okay.
And 2 years was pretty much all I could stand emotionally.
Sure. No,
And when I was at Western, I will say this, as a grad student, my assistantship was working in the community, doing community parks and rec. But I also had an opportunity to co-teach a class with another grad student. And that's when I realized I loved teaching, and that's what I wanted to go into. So going and working in Ohio was, again, a way for me to get experience, but I knew I wanted to go somewhere and teach. So I spent 2 years there, and then got a position at Iowa State University in Ames as a teaching instructor. And again, it was all outdoor recreation stuff. So I taught the camping and the canoeing and the climbing and all that kind of stuff while I was there.
Okay.
And then the same thing, because I knew I wanted to go on for my doctorate, I started working on my degree there. I took a couple classes, fell in love, again, knew that that's what I wanted to end up doing. But they didn't have a degree in Parks and Recreation.
Okay.
And I knew this is what I wanted to do.
Sure.
So I started looking for doc programs. And quite honestly, I don't know how or why I chose Indiana University, but that's where I ended up going. And again, in Parks and Recreation. So all three of my degrees are in Parks and Rec, although they're at all three different universities.
Yeah. And so, and I know Indiana still has that program, maybe not in the same shape, form, or fashion, but
right.
For folks that are looking for PhD programs, and I guess when you were going through that process, you said you don't remember exactly, but what are some of the things you enjoyed about your time at Indiana as far as the program, I guess, is a good way to look at it?
Sure. First of all, Indiana, IU is in a beautiful community. It's in Bloomington, Indiana. The campus itself is all Indiana limestone. It's a beautiful campus, beautiful grounds, state park just down the street. Again, I had funding issues. I had enough money for 2 years of school, so I crammed in my PhD into 2 years. Had an opportunity to teach while I was there. I got a scholarship to go to an international conference, so that was my first international opportunity. And had some great people in my cohort, had excellent mentors. It was a great experience. I would do it again if I was in that particular situation.
So you get done with your doctorate there at Indiana, and now you're Dr. Deb Jordan.
That's right.
So without did you, when you're looking at the job market, right, did you kind of spread far and wide, or were you selective, or what was your game plan looking at faculty positions from there?
Yeah, I was not picky geographically, other than I knew I didn't want to go as far west as California. But everything else was fair game. I didn't care what size the school was. I didn't care how big the recreation program was. I was looking for something where, again, the classes that I could teach fit my outdoor rec as well as my leadership kind of stuff, because I had kind of merged into that
Mm-hmm.
at that point. And yeah, so I spread my stuff far and wide in terms of who had open positions,
Yeah.
and yeah, ended up down in Texas.
Which is now Texas State, but it was Southwest Texas at the time, right?
Correct.
Uh,
Yep.
and how
And
long
I
were you
lived in,
there?
and
Sorry.
I commuted down to San Marcos.
Okay. Yep. And how long were you there?
I was there for
3
3 years.
years.
And this is something else that, as students are watching this, I think it's important to understand that your first job is probably not your dream job. And as long as you're purposeful about where and when you're moving, I think it's perfectly fine to do that. It worked really well for me.
Sure.
So I spent 3 years there. It's a tier 3 school, if you will. We taught 5 classes each semester,
Oh, all right.
which is a lot. That's all we were expected to do is teach. We weren't expected to do any research or anything like that. But that's when I first started writing and doing a lot of professional presentations with the Texas Recreation and Park Society, with the Texas Oklahoma American Camp Association group. So I got really well connected. I had faculty who were really helpful in getting me well connected and giving me those kind of opportunities.
And so you said you started writing. I know I want to ask a little bit about your scholarship after we talk about kind of your path.
Sure.
But you mentioned the camping world. So what other kinds of things, projects, writing projects, or research projects, as far as just like topical stuff? What kind of stuff did you get involved in?
Well, when I was in Texas, not a lot. It was primarily with the organized camping field
Okay,
because I was teaching 5 classes every semester
sure.
uh, and during the summers. So it was crammed. Again, I learned a ton. I had great mentors who helped me navigate the system and learn how to teach. Because when you go to grad school, you learn all the content, but you don't necessarily learn how to teach.
Right.
And obviously, that's pretty important when you're going to be teaching. So I had people who were great to help me through that entire process. And so that's what I primarily focused on when I was at SWT, Texas
Yeah.
State now.
And so your next step was Northern Iowa. Um, I
Yep. Yep.
try to make sure I got them in order. So you're there for a few years at Texas State, and so maybe talk to us about why you explored opportunities and how this next step kind of came to be.
Sure. So, like I said, Texas State University is a tier 3 school. They still teach 5 semesters. They only have bachelor's and master's degrees. They don't offer doctoral degrees. They may have 1 or 2 on campus, but their primary focus is on undergrad and master's level. So I knew I wanted to get to a university where I'd have a little more opportunity to do scholarship, which meant a lighter teaching load, which meant a different tier of university. So I was looking at schools that the teaching load might be a 3.3 or a 3.2, where there were scholarship expectations, where certainly bachelor's, master's degrees, and someplace on campus they offered doctorates as well. And quite honestly, I loved Iowa. So going back to Iowa felt really good.
Yeah.
Different university, of course, but Iowa's a beautiful state. People don't give it enough credit. And it again, that was something that fit who I was and what I was interested in at the time.
And you were teaching similar courses there as you were previously.
Yep, outdoor classes, leadership classes, programming, sort of the general kind of things. And then again, teaching both undergrad and master's level courses. And while I was there, I got involved with an organization called Camp Adventure,
Hmm.
which comes out of UNI, and it's a program that provides staff for military camps all across the world. So one summer I spent in Germany, and I was supervising not only a camp in Germany, but I had students in England, Italy, and Spain. And so I traveled all around visiting those students and visiting those camps. making sure the kids were being treated well. And so again, a great opportunity to do what I love, to get some on the ground experience again, to work with children as well as with staff. So I did that for a few years overseas as well as here in the United States as well.
And how long did you stay at Northern Iowa?
I was there for 6 years.
6 years. That's what I was kind of thinking. It was a little bit longer.
Yep. And that was the first place. I know you said you were going to ask about my scholarship, but
Yeah.
one of the important things I think that happened at UNI, I connected with somebody to be a co-author on an introductory textbook. And so that was my first introduction to writing books. And for me, it was quite easy, quite honestly. I just wrote like I normally taught, and it worked out on the page. And after that experience, that's when I first connected with publishers of my own and wrote the first leadership book that I have. So again, a great experience. I had good mentors, lots of opportunities to stretch myself, which is something that I was really interested in making sure that I did every place that I was.
And that leadership book is still available, right?
It's in its 4th edition, and in fact, I have a meeting later today with the publisher to put it in its 5th edition. So I'll be working on that over the next year.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
You know, the in you have a couple different textbooks at this point, correct?
Yep. The leadership book is my own, if you will.
Yeah.
The introductory textbook, I think it's in its 3rd or 4th edition, but after the 2nd edition, I was pretty much done with that one.
Yeah.
Intro textbooks just aren't that interesting for me. And then a colleague that I had at UNI, he and I have written a programming textbook, and it's in its 4th edition as well. And so probably next year we will revise it for its 5th edition.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
And I know your next step is where I initially met you was at Oklahoma State University. I came to Oklahoma State in 1999. I was not a rec undergrad to start off with. So what made you come to Oklahoma State and to transition from? And I agree with you. Iowa does not get the credit it deserves. It's a cool place
Right.
with a lot of beautiful places to see, a lot of cool stuff to do. But what made you consider Oklahoma State and make that move?
Well, again, looking at different tiers of universities. So I went from a tier 3 school to a tier 2 school, and OSU is a tier 1 school where we did have a doctoral program as well as an undergrad and master's program. A couple of the faculty members at OSU I had known for years. In fact, we, during the summers, would take groups out to Philmont Scout Ranch and do outdoor leadership training for a couple weeks at a time. So I had been connected with them for several years. And when they had a position, they recruited me. So it actually worked out timing wise in terms of when I was ready to leave Iowa. And then again, the people, Oklahoma, again, is one of those states that doesn't get enough credit for how pretty it is and the opportunities there. So in 97 is when I went down to OSU.
Okay. So you weren't too far predating my time there.
Right.
You know, and I remember, I've spent 3 years as a civil engineering major.
Wow.
Before my first conversation was actually with Dr. Chris Cashel,
Uh-huh.
and I don't remember exactly how it happened, but she was basically, you need to meet Dr. Jordan and Dr. Kennedy at the time, and it was a whirlwind because I remember, I got there, I arrived on campus in August, was looking at a couple different programs that switched to because civil engineering was not going to work out for me for a variety of reasons. And then it was a matter of like in 3 days I had switched to, at the time was leisure studies or leisure service management.
Right.
And,
right.
It was a whirlwind, but it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. And I look back at that time and, especially with Dr. Cashel, Dr. Kennedy, it was a special time in my life because I kind of like you had said, you'd found your home when your friend introduced you to that class there at Slippery Rock. And that's when I I didn't have a friend in the program necessarily, but I knew after I talked to a couple of folks and then talked to some faculty that I'd found my place. So I want to say thank you while we're at the Oklahoma State stop. Um, so while you're at Oklahoma State, you were there for a little bit longer time. Um, so, what kind of in what kind of projects did you get involved in? What kind of special memories did you take away from Oklahoma State during your time?
I was at OSU for 12 years, which so far still is the longest I've ever been at a particular institution. Uh, Dr. Kennedy, you mentioned him, Lowell Kennedy. He and I really hit it off as colleagues. And so even though I worked with Chris Cashel on still doing some outdoor leadership stuff in the summer times, as Lowell and I started working together on different projects, we really meshed well in terms of our strengths and our interests and so on. So we, primarily through him, got connected to the Oklahoma Tourism and Recreation Department, which is where the state park system is housed. And so for several years, and he is still doing these, we worked with the state to create comprehensive park plans for every one of the state parks.
Yeah.
And there are 50 of them. So we did 5 every year. And that allowed us both, myself, to visit pretty much every state park in the state, which is how I know how beautiful the state is and the variety of things that it has available. And again, an amazing experience, an opportunity. Got to begin working with the doctoral students, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And so that was something that was different than the other universities I worked at, where we did not have a doctoral program. And at least for me, I think that's my primary fit, is working with doc students, even though I don't do that today. So so we had a whole bunch of stuff going on at that time, still doing ropes courses, sort of things. One of the other things I didn't mention that is sort of an extra, when I was in Texas, I went through the training and became an EMT.
Okay.
Uh, so when I was at Oklahoma, I went through, even though I was nationally certified, Oklahoma didn't accept it. So I went through the EMT training again when I was at OSU. I also had gone through the Wilderness First Responder course. So combining them together, I had a Wilderness EMT certification. So when I took people out into the woods, it was something that we were prepared for. We never had anything drastic, if you will. We had a couple of psychological evaluations where people just couldn't handle being away from people and so forth for that long a period of time. But yeah, so that was something else that I did when I was in Oklahoma. I volunteered as an EMT for the local fire department, and yeah, got involved with, continued my involvement with the American Camp Association, National Recreation and Park Association I was really involved with. Um, so there were a number of things, again, that I was able to connect with people across the country, as well as people within the state. And those connections, I think, are so important, not only in terms of our own professional growth, but our opportunities to give back to the profession as well. So I value those to this day, and continue to, as my network continues to expand in different areas.
So, and I've got to say that I had several courses with you as an undergrad. The one course that I am most appreciative of, and you know, I think this speaks a lot to you, but I think it speaks a lot to a different conversation as well. But I grew up in Texas, in the middle of nowhere. Moved to Oklahoma when I was almost 16, small town, and really had not seen the world. And I took, and I forget the exact name of the course, but it was basically the diversity course that you taught as an undergrad.
Mm.
And it really opened my eyes, my heart, my mind to a lot of things. And I want to say I really appreciate that. Um, I think it's really important for a lot of kids from whether it's rural Iowa, Oklahoma, Arkansas, wherever it may be, that don't get a lot of exposure to a lot of stuff like that. And so anyway, I really appreciate that, and that has always stuck with me. How important that was for me. Um, so at some point I came back to Oklahoma State, and it's not about Mike, but I came back to Oklahoma State to start my PhD, and shortly after that, much to my unhappiness, you decided to take a new position. Could you tell us about exploring that new path for your professional life?
Sure. While I was at OSU, and actually for quite a while, people had been asking me, have you ever thought about being a department chair? You'd be really good at it. When I was at OSU, I had an opportunity to spend 18 months being an associate dean of the graduate college. So I had some administrative exposure and so forth, and found that I was pretty good at it and I enjoyed it. So at that point, I couldn't go any farther in terms of being promoted in the ranks of being a professor. And so once you, as you well know, you go from assistant professor to associate professor to full professor. And once you're at the full rank, that's it. And so to sort of continue to expand on that, administration is the next level. So department head position came open here at East Carolina University. It also is a heck of a lot closer to Myrtle Beach, which is where my aging father and his wife were located. So coming in out here made really good sense, number one, in terms of the position, but it also gave me an opportunity to be near my aging parent, essentially, which worked out great because it wasn't very long after that that he passed away and things sort of started to go downhill, if you will, that way. So it was good to be here to be able to provide that family support for him. But yeah, I came as department chair, spent 5 years doing that. I learned a ton about the inner workings of a university that as a faculty member, you don't have to know and you don't really care to know. But a lot of things go on in the background that require so much attention. And so I did 5 years as department chair. And that's a typical rotation here at ECU as well as other schools.
And now you've kind of gone back to just a regular faculty role.
Right.
And so I guess, and you've been at ECU for a number of years now. 10-ish?
11. So I'm still
Okay.
short of what I did in Oklahoma, but I'm coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to, I remember, because I'm going into this just completed my 9th year as a faculty myself. I can't believe I just
Wow.
added that up, right? It's like, wow.
Yeah. Wow.
So I guess, part of this is, as a faculty member, you teach courses, you get involved in scholarship projects, research, and different service things. I guess the first question I want to ask regarding that is, so now that you've had a history of your career, what kind of scholarship and projects are you involved in, or have you kind of made into your own at this point?
I'm glad you asked that question because I think it's something that as students are looking to find a career in our field, because our field is so broad, is getting involved in professional associations is so important. And so because I'm interested in outdoor recreation is where I started, I initially was a member of the Association for Experiential Education. And so if students are not familiar with that, I encourage them to go do that. If there's any interest in outdoors, outdoor leadership, AEE. And I was also involved with the American Camp Association because I had worked at camps. And again, it's got that outdoor flavor to it. And then I started to get involved in the National Recreation Park Association. So I had those primary three. And then after a while, you realize you just can't handle being that involved in many. Because I did get involved. It wasn't just going to the conferences. I served on committees. I served on task forces. I served as chair member, as a chair of different committees. I served on the board of directors. So I had opportunities to do those kind of things. And that's really where I was able to spread my national network. And so now I know people almost in every state. And if I need something, or if I need a contact for an internship for a student or whatever, I can just make a phone call or send somebody an email. And so that professional involvement really was and remains critically important. I do a lot of presentations. You mentioned diversity. I do a lot of trainings, again, across the country on diversity, on leadership development. After spending 35 years of being involved with NRPA at the leadership level and all the way up to the board of directors, I decided to kind of step back from NRPA a little bit and focus more on the American Campus Association. So right now I'm super involved with that. I'm involved with a group at the national level. I'm the essentially chair of the board of directors for the southeastern region of the U.S. So again, I've got connections and opportunities all over the place. One of the things that I really appreciate having an opportunity to do is be an accreditation visitor. So I'm an accreditation visitor for academic programs. So I visit universities all over the place and see what they got going on. And I'm also an accreditation visitor for the American Campus Association. So I visit camps every summer to see that they're meeting standards as well. And then I, a few years ago, got involved with the National Inclusion Project, and they are and have created standards to for camps to become accredited as inclusion-based camps,
Okay.
meaning that they appropriately have all the services, the equipment, and so forth to work with campers with disabilities. And so I also travel across the country to review camps for inclusion practices as well. So those have been amazing. Again, I've been able to stretch myself, to meet people all over the place, to connect with people, to co-author articles and make presentations with one another at all these conferences and so on. So just tons of opportunities to continue what I've been doing and what I've been growing into over the past many years.
And so what courses are you teaching now that you've gone back to your faculty role?
I teach a 2-3 load. So one semester I teach 2 classes, one semester I teach 3. Although, because I've had research projects going on, I've actually been on a 2 for a while. So I teach our leadership class and everything a different semester, of course.
Yeah.
Our evaluation course at the graduate level, I teach a legal liability class, which is what my thesis was on. I also teach the diversity course. I've got a scholarship of recreation that I teach at the graduate level.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got a series of professional seminars for our students. They're 1 credit each. First one is an introduction to the major. It helps students figure out what they want to do.
Sure.
The second one is helping them to get really connected with our profession. And then the third one is getting them ready for internship. And so I also supervise interns as well.
Okay.
And I teach strategic planning, grant writing, and park planning. So
Okay.
depends on the year and where we are timing wise.
And it's kind of neat, a little bit. We talked about it, but a little bit because I've followed your career as well, is to kind of see that everything kind of staying in that path, and seeing what you're doing now is it's still interesting. So, kind of getting toward the end, one question I ask everybody is, if you weren't doing what you're doing now, and money wasn't an option, and you can kind of pick to do whatever you want professionally, whether you call it a dream job or whatever, what kind of things would you be into, or what kind of job would you have if you could kind of pick and choose?
That's a hard question, because being a professor is a great job.
Mm-hmm.
I tell master students and people who are thinking about going into a doc program that being a faculty member is the closest thing you can be to being self-employed, and yet somebody else pays you, because there's so much freedom to do what you want to do, to contribute to the profession, to contribute to your own growth, that it's a great job. I don't know, quite honestly, I don't know what I would do if I had another opportunity, maybe something internationally. I've had a lot of opportunities to travel internationally, and I love it.
Yeah.
So maybe something along those lines, doing leadership training of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Different ways of molding future professionals, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
So before I let you go, for somebody that may be thinking about following a similar path, whether it be specifically within the same lines of research and scholarship, or, just in general, thinking about, within outdoor recreation in general, going that academic path, Is there anything that you've learned or any tidbits of wisdom you'd pass on to somebody thinking about that?
Well, one of the first things, and I've mentioned this a couple times, is establishing a network and getting involved with professional organizations and associations. I think that's really where you sort of learn and refine who you are and what your interest areas are. So, like I mentioned initially, the Association for Experiential Education was my first professional association, as well as the American Campus Association. But that's sort of when I really refined the leadership development piece of what I was doing in outdoor rec. And so getting involved, whether it be at the state level or the national level, is critical. It really is. And to develop that network, and again, it helps you to get a better sense of who you are, what direction you really want to go. Finding a mentor or mentors, asking people to serve as a mentor for you, I think is so important. So, and that's important whether you're going into community-based rec or outdoor rec or military rec or therapeutic rec or any type of recreation in our field. Finding a mentor and asking one or more people to mentor you, I think is definitely something that will support your own growth and development as a person as well as a professional. So that to me is like a no-brainer, if you will. You have to begin to develop that network and seek out mentors. And I think, again, I mentioned this earlier, that it's okay to know that the first job you take is not your dream job.
Right.
And it's okay to know that maybe you think you're only going to spend a couple years there because you're still trying to figure out who you are and where you fit. The one thing I would caution is 6 months at a place is too short. So you want to give it at least a year, if not two, because I think it takes that long to learn the system as well as why you feel like you do fit or why you feel like you don't fit.
Yeah.
So knowing that it's okay to move jobs as long as you're making conscious decisions about it and not just doing it because it doesn't feel right. You got to figure out why it doesn't feel right and is there something you can do to make it feel right.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes it's just meshing with people. Sometimes it's the position or the tasks that you're doing. But figuring out what that is before you just move to another job, I think is again really important for your own development as a professional. So those would be a couple things that I would suggest to students as they're trying to find their way into the breadth of what we've got going on here in Parks and Recreation.
Right. And it's that's a good way to put it because it's so wide, diverse, big. Um, there's just so many opportunities. Whether you stay in academics or you go on and do the million other jobs that people can do with in our field.
Yeah, I actually tell students as well as parents that going into our field is a good thing, bad thing. A good thing is that it's so broad you can pretty much do whatever you want. The bad thing is it's so broad that sometimes it's hard to figure out what you want to do.
Right.
So that's why I think experience before your internship is so important. Your internship, and again, sometimes students will get an internship that they don't like. That's a perfectly legitimate learning opportunity to find out this is not the part of the field I want to go into. Fine, not a problem. Use that information now to sort of sort out what it is that you do want to do and what it is that you do want to look for. So getting it, I think probably one of the underlying things is getting a sense of who you are as a person, where you think you can contribute the most, what excites you the most, where that you can develop passion for something.
Yep.
So for me, it's the leadership development and it's the diversity piece. In evaluation, I do a lot of workshops on evaluation as well. I get fired up about that stuff. When I do presentations on evaluation or leadership or diversity, I mean, it's exciting. Every one of them is exciting. It's something I'm passionate about. It's something that I've evolved into in terms of sort of refining what that means. And that takes time. So allowing yourself that opportunity to learn who you are, where you want to go, what part of our profession is most suitable for who you are and how you work. It takes time. And so you have to allow yourself that time.
And I think that's perfect advice, because I'm no, as you know, I took my first faculty position, or even before that, taking some other times I've worked in different positions, is um, figuring out when I didn't feel comfortable what it was, you know. And sometimes you can pick up that right away. Sometimes it takes a little time to learn it. You know, is it me?